Oh, Mike Griffith here from American Airlines Center again. Pregame look on Tennessee against Wright State today in the first round of the NCAA tournament here in Dallas, and expect a pretty good ball game from Wright State today. You know, we talked with Greg Campy, the Oakland basketball coach. Oakland, of course, a fellow member of the Horizon League, along with Wright State, and Wright State was able to beat the Golden Grizzlies twice. Another member of that staff, Tony Jones, and Tennessee fans may remember Tony. He was an assistant on Bruce Pearl's coaching staff at Tennessee, and Campy and Jones both said this is going to be a good basketball game. Tennessee is a 13-point favorite. They are the number 3 seed, and Wright State is a 14 seed. And on paper, it certainly looks like a mismatch, but from what Jones and Campy said, Wright State is a savvy team. They're a veteran team. They got a kid by the name of Grant Benzinger, and I don't know if you've read my SEC Country story on what Grant Benzinger had to say, but he gave a pretty convincing argument as to why he thought the Raiders were going to beat Tennessee. Not that they might, not that they could, but that they would. He explained how they were going to play the game. He said, we're going to play Tennessee man-to-man. He said, last week after we won that Horizon League tournament on Tuesday, we put all of our time in the gym. We've earned this victory. And so Wright State comes into this game very confident that they're going to beat Tennessee. It's interesting, you know, the underdog is Wright State, and they're saying, hey, pick us to win, we're going to win. Meanwhile, Tennessee shows up here, reminding everybody that they're just a team of 2 and 3 stars that nobody picked. And you've probably seen the video, Don't Pick Us, it's called. A film crew from New York came down to Knoxville and shot that on Monday, I was told. Tennessee saying, hey, we're the underdog. Forget that we're the 3 seed. We're the team that nobody picked, so don't pick us now. So it's kind of an interesting twist on this first round game. The underdog wants to be treated like the favorite. The favorite wants to be treated like the underdog. Both teams are confident, I can tell you that, and both teams are loose. I was here at the shoot-arounds yesterday, here at the home of the Dallas Mavericks and the Dallas Stars, the American Airlines Center. And oh, by the way, what a great environment for basketball this is. So much better than when the tournament is over there at Jerry World in those giant football stadiums. I've never been a fan of that, when they close off half of those arenas, half of those football stadiums, and make them basketball arenas. To me, I prefer the basketball arena. It's a lot nicer. I see Patrick 80 has a question. What does Wright State play like? Well, if you read that article, Grant Emzinger really explains their style. Typically, they're a half-court kind of grinded-out team, a lot like Tennessee. They run a motion offense, and if that sounds familiar, it should. That's what Conzo Martin ran at Tennessee, where there's a lot of ball screens and a lot of movement away from the ball. And the objective is if you can't get a quick and easy basket, then you want to use a lot of motion, because what you want is the other team to get tired defending you, running around, chasing, going through picks. They're going to do a lot of that motion offense. So if Wright State can't score in transition, they're going to go into a half-court set and be pretty deliberate in their style of play. This could be one of those grinded-out games. What Tennessee wants to do, and I talked to some of their players about their game plan yesterday, they really want to focus on Grant. Grant Benzinger goes 6'3" and 190 pounds. He's a senior from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm telling you, he's got a Dane Bradshaw quality to him for you Tennessee fans that remember Dane. Now, Grant's a bit more of a shooter than Dane, but he's very savvy. He can distribute the ball. He can shoot the three-pointer. No doubt he's the leader. When Wright State beat Georgia Tech earlier this year, Grant scored 22 points. Jordan Bowden is going to get the call on that, Knoxville's own. They're going to be guarding each other, so Benzinger on Bowden, Bowden on Benzinger. I wonder if we'll see Benzinger move over if Lamonte Turner gets hot, because he is their best defender. They got another guy named Mark Hughes that was on the Horizon League all-defensive team, and he's the guy that's going to try to guard Admiral Schofield. Another interesting twist with Wright State, they've got a big guy, big 6'10", 275-pound center named Loudon Love, and he was recruited to play football at some Big Ten schools. Injured his knee his senior year, and he's going to be the guy matching up with SEC Player of the Year Grant Williams in the paint. So those are some matchups to look for as far as names, who's going to do what. Wright State told me they want to run up and down the court when they get the rebound. They want to beat Tennessee back, because they know that when Tennessee misses shots, Rick Barnes sends a lot of guys to the glass, sometimes 3 or 4 players. That leaves Tennessee susceptible to a transition game, and so Wright State wants to score off of those Tennessee missed shots and catch Tennessee in those 3-on-2 type of breaks. Tennessee, meanwhile, they want to put some pressure. They want to put pressure on Grant Benzinger. They want to really pay a lot of attention to him, take him away, make everybody else score for Wright State. And then the other thing they want to do is ball pressure. So I think you're going to see Tennessee pick them up in the backcourt and try and wear down Wright State. They know that Wright State doesn't really have a lot of depth. Demetric Evans wants to know what time is the game. The game is at 12:40 p.m. Eastern Time. It's on True TV. They have a streaming option available if you go online. You may have to pay for it. If you get by Tennessee, Patrick Eady wants to know, if Tennessee gets by Wright State, who would be the better matchup? I think Loyola of Chicago would be the better matchup, even though I think that's a savvy, battle-tested team. I saw Miami take the court yesterday for warm-ups, and let me tell you, they are huge. They have got some long, big guys. That is an athletic basketball team. Now, Miami has been wildly inconsistent. We saw them beat North Carolina in Chapel Hill just a couple weeks ago, but then North Carolina came back and beat them by double digits in the ACC tournament. But still, Miami is a team that scares me if I'm a Tennessee fan, because of their size and their athleticism and the fact that they play in the ACC. Now, when I talked with Josh Pastner about these matchups, and Josh Pastner, of course, is the coach at Georgia Tech, he played against Wright State, lost to them, played against Tennessee, lost to them, and beat Miami. Josh Pastner says Tennessee is going to be in the Sweet 16. So, if that makes Tennessee fans feel any better, Josh Pastner believes you're going to do it today. Patrick says you heard they're guard heavy. Maybe so, but they've got a couple of bigs that Tennessee doesn't have anyone that size. Kyle Alexander is 6'10", 6'11", but he was not as physically as imposing as those Miami guys I saw. Tennessee fans better just worry about this game first. We'll talk about Miami or Loyola Chicago if Tennessee gets by this game that starts in just a little bit over an hour in this arena behind me. You can see a little bit of orange going in. Yesterday at the shoot-around, I was kind of surprised that we didn't see more Tennessee fans. In fact, I don't think I saw 10 at the arena. I don't know if they didn't know about it or maybe they just hadn't arrived yet. I mean, Dallas is a pretty long drive, but I'd heard that there was a pretty strong Tennessee alumni chapter here. I'll be interested to see today how Tennessee represents. I don't expect this to be a very well-attended regional. It's not like people are going crazy for tickets. I think you can check StubHub and see how inexpensive they are. There's really no marquee programs here. It was interesting listening to the Texas Tech coach last night trying to sell everyone that Stephen F. Austin was a good basketball. In fact, he said that. I put it on Twitter. One of the best teams in the country, he said, because they beat West Virginia 2 years ago. That's what he said. He said they're one of the best teams in the country. They beat West Virginia 2 years ago. That, to me, is not a qualification for one of the best teams in the country. But I do understand why coaches want to sell that. Everybody wants to say they're in the toughest bracket. Everybody wants to say they've got the toughest matchup. Everybody wants to get their players' attention. And certainly Rick Barnes wanted to get the Vols' attention. He even implied that Tennessee didn't handle the big stage well against Kentucky. He said it could have been the stage. And again, that's in his story. If you go to secsports.com and go to the Tennessee page, you'll see just a ton of stories on this game for myself. You can follow me on Twitter at MikeGriffith32, and I'm going to do a live blog. After I finish this stand-up, I'm going to go inside, plug my computer in courtside, and go to this live blog, this live updates post that I've got posted right now on SEC Country. I'd really like to see some comments from Tennessee fans. It's a lot easier to do those posts and updates and provide information when you know what the fans want. And you're the ones watching at home. You're the ones that hear the commentators and the questions that they beg. Or you may have questions after you read a story or something on Twitter, and the best way to get that question across is in that live updates post, or to hit me up on Twitter at MikeGriffith32. So that type of interaction is what makes today's modern media kind of cool, is it gives us a chance to communicate directly with the fans. And of course, I'll be courtside and I'll be providing you with good information. I know there's a lot of people out there on social media that do their shows or their blogs or their podcasts from their basement, but we're right here at the event or at UT doing the interviews with the players and the coaches, and they give us all this great information, like this packet here. Tom Satoviak is the Tennessee Sports Information Director. All these great stats. I didn't do my own homework. Tom and his staff do the homework, And I look at these books, and if you go to utsports.com, you can find these game notes for you fans that are serious about it. I think Tom and his staff do a great job, and they also take great pictures and videos. So I think Tennessee does a great job for their fans, and now I think it's time where the fans have to do a great job for Tennessee. Whether that means filling up these seats in this arena or hitting it on social media, and representing the team well there. It is True TV, Demetric Evans. The game does start at 12:40 Eastern Time here at American Airlines Center in Dallas. Just a picture-perfect day. I don't expect much of a walk-up crowd for the midweek, anyway, much less when the weather is this nice as it is here. About 65 with a light breeze, 65 to 70. And Dallas, a really nice city with a lot of restaurants. It's a great destination city. I'll tell you what, I'd like to be back in Texas in about 2 weeks because the Final Four is in San Antonio, and that's one of the best cities that I've been to on the road. The Alamo and the Canal District is beautiful there, and that's where the Final Four is, and I'll bet there's a lot of Tennessee basketball fans that would like to be there in 2 weeks too. If Tennessee gets through this weekend here in Dallas, this South Regional, they'd play in Atlanta next week, and that's where they would probably run into number 2 seed Cincinnati. And Cincinnati's a very good basketball team. I think they're 28-4. Keep an eye on them. I know Texas is also in that bracket with Cincinnati, and I've seen some people that have picked Texas to make a little bit of a run. Coach Barnes is a finalist for the Coach of the Year. Dennis Smith brought that up here, and thanks for bringing that up, Dennis. That was a good transition into what I was just going to tell you. Rick Barnes was at Texas for 17 years, and he's back here in the Lone Star State, and the media here remember him. And it's kind of interesting because they like him and they respect him, but they're suspicious. They're suspicious of this Tennessee team. They say, you know what? They've all told me, Rick Barnes doesn't beat teams that are higher seeds than him. I said, well, what in the world are you talking about? I saw Tennessee upset a lot of teams. He goes, well, that's fine, but in the postseason, he really doesn't do much. Remember, Rick Barnes only made one Final Four run at Texas. Didn't really fulfill their expectations, and that's why he ended up parting ways. The statistic that I got on him is that Rick Barnes has only won one NCAA tournament game at Texas over a team that was a higher seed, and that was that Final Four year. So Barnes not known to upset teams, known to take care of business and beat the teams he's supposed to, the Texas writers say, but he's not going to upset anybody. So we'll have to wait and see if Rick Barnes can upset someone in the NCAA tournament so these Texas writers can see what he's done at Tennessee. But right now they fall back on, he really didn't do a lot with Kevin Durant here, and he only made one Final Four and hadn't been to the Sweet 16 in over 10 years. So it'll be interesting because Rick Barnes has his critics in this building and he has his critics in this state. He's got his friends too. He's well respected and well liked, but they're not ready to buy in. And that's been a constant that I've heard from Texas writers the last 3 years. So we'll see if Coach Barnes in Tennessee can show these Texas folks that Tennessee basketball can play pretty big too. That'll be interesting today. As for this game, the keys that I look for, a quick early start for Tennessee. If they can get up on Wright State, let Wright State know they don't belong on the same court with them, I think that could have an effect. But the longer that Wright State sticks around, the more dangerous this game gets, especially if it turns into one of those grinded out half-court games. We know that Tennessee has had trouble with their half-court offense. Obviously, the matchup that Grant Williams has inside with Loudon Love, can Loudon Love, the Horizon League Freshman of the Year, handle Grant Williams, the SEC Player of the Year, one-on-one? It would be bad news if he could. Now, the secret to a lot of Admiral Schofield's success has been that teams have had to double cover Grant Williams. Georgia was really the only team that could single Grant effectively with Yante Maiden, and that's why the Bulldogs were such a tough matchup. So Doug Whaling says he didn't have Admiral at Texas. No, Doug, he had a lot of NBA players, though, and that was a pretty common complaint. But if they're able to single cover Grant Williams in the paint, then I think Wright State could cause a lot of problems. I don't necessarily believe that they can, but I've heard so much about this Loudon Love kid. I'm really anxious to see how that matchup plays up. So those are a couple things to look for. How does Grant match up in the paint? The SEC Player of the Year. If they need to double him, that's what enables Admiral Schofield to get loose and score all those points. And then the other thing is, can Tennessee jump to an early lead? These early games every year in the NCAA tournament, it seems like we're watching them and somebody's up on somebody else and we're going, whoa, we didn't expect that. that, is it going to be the Tennessee game? I kind of think it might be the Oklahoma game. I'm looking for Oklahoma to maybe pull an upset today after their team has been drugged through the muck and many people saying that they don't belong to in this tournament. So I'm going to keep an eye on that Oklahoma game myself. Dennis Smith says, different person, and Tennessee has a real family of sports. Tennessee was more business of sports. Well, don't tell that to Derek Dooley or Butch Jones right now, because they'll tell you they got the business. I think every school is big time. When you've got a budget, an athletic budget of over $100 million, you're big time, and you're big time business. I don't know that I buy that Tennessee is any more family or has been. They may be now that Philip Fulmer is the athletic director, but these last 8 years, I don't think there's been much family at all. I think there's been a real problem, a real schism there, really, with Pat Summitt, with her illness, the late, great Pat Summitt. I thought when Pat fell ill, I thought that really started to affect the staff chemistry, because she was such a great leader of the program. When Philip Fulmer was fired, and then a couple years later, Coach Summitt leaves. To me, that was when the Tennessee program really kind of started to crumble from within, and you didn't have that leadership that you needed in the athletic department. You didn't have it in the president's office. You certainly didn't have it with the previous chancellor, Jimmy Cheek, who wasn't qualified to run the program. And I never thought that Dave Hart really had the type of charisma that an athletic director needed in that situation that Tennessee was in. I think the hiring of Philip Fulmer, however, has kind of rallied everyone together. Coach Fulmer, he didn't go out on the best of terms, if you'll remember. I thought his firing was somewhat unceremonious and really somewhat of a disgrace when one considers everything that he'd accomplished. I thought that was more of a business decision than a family decision. But having Philip Fulmer back in office now, and Chancellor Davenport, to me, these are two people with charisma that rally the fans, that are very positive, that put a good face on Tennessee and Tennessee athletics. Really helped Joe DePietro out, because he's really not that people person. You don't see him out in front of the cameras or anything like that. So I think Chancellor Davenport and Philip Fulmer have been a blessing for this president and really helped Tennessee out quite a bit. So far, Rick Barnes, another guy, I think he's looked at as someone very well respected in the athletic department. I know that Rihanna Potke recently did a really good story with Ralph and Karen Weekly talking about how much respect Coach Barnes really gets in that athletic department, how they buy Christmas presents for all the coaches. Just what a great guy Rick Barnes has been, and how he's helped lift the program. And certainly now, as we mentioned just a minute ago, Philip Fulmer being back in charge, and what that has done for Tennessee athletics. And had the opportunity to talk to Jeremy Pruitt, I guess it was a week ago today. He met with the select Tennessee football beat writers. And Pruitt's message was, hey guys, I'm here to coach football. I don't want to be a jerk to anybody. He's not out here to wave the pom-poms or rally the troops. I don't think that's where Tennessee is right now. I think they're past that. They may have been there 5 years ago, coming off Derek Dooley. They might have needed somebody like that. But I think right now Tennessee fans are ready for wins. And that's what Jeremy Pruitt's all about. He's a competitor. He's a hard-nosed guy. And that was the message he got across to us football beat writers. And he also told us, hey, you guys need to go cover some basketball. Quit asking me all these questions. So Jeremy was about tired of all the Tennessee football beat writers chasing him down as we tried to give you preview information. They start spring practice on Tuesday. Pro day is Monday. We'll see how these guys test out. Tuesday, spring football practice starts. But today it's basketball, and it's basketball for the first time in 4 years in the NCAA tournament for the Tennessee Vols. Been a long time since they've been here. Last time they were here, Conzo Martin took the Vols to the Sweet 16. And a lot of people have asked me, why isn't Tennessee in Nashville? And I said, well, because they wanted Conzo Martin there. Of course, all the Tennessee fans could go support Coach Martin, right? Of course, I'm joking, but Missouri is playing in Nashville. They got a tough game today against Florida State, kind of one of those pick'em games. I'll be interested to see how Conzo does, as well as the rest of the SEC. The SEC's got a record 8 teams in the NCAA tournament. The previous record was 6. They've done that 6 times. And, a little NIT action last night, and as a side note, I'll tell you, if you like basketball and you like college sports, if you can Google what happened between LSU and Louisiana Lafayette last night, there was some theater there. And NIT games normally don't get me too excited, but that was some pretty good theater and in-state rivalry. And a couple coaches really kind of chirping and going at each other, had to be separated after the game. So if you go to SEC Country, I know our reporter's got a story on that as well. That would be the LSU page. that's one of the great things about SEC Country. We've got all the different beats covered in one spot. And we've got some really cool apps too. If you put our Tennessee app on your phone, you'll get all the news. And I'm going to wrap this up for now. I've got to get inside and get to that live updates post that I told you guys about. If you go to seccountry.com, you'll see that live updates post. I saved a special picture of Grant and Admiral just for that story. I thought it was, I think those two guys have been the story all year. And Tennessee fans better hope they're the story today. If you end up having to rely on your perimeter game, it could get kind of dicey. And to me, that's why I've said from the start of the year, this team will only go as far as Jordan Bone takes them. I think point guard play is ultimately going to be the real deal for Tennessee in terms of what determines how far the Vols go. And I think Jordan Bone is that long, athletic point guard. When he is at his best, Tennessee is at their best. Jordan is also the guy that leads Tennessee in the plus-minus stat. That statistic tells you how many points Tennessee outscores their opponent by with each player on the floor. And this season, when Jordan Bone has been on the floor, Tennessee has had the greatest discrepancy in terms of the points advantage over the opponent. So I think point guard play is ultimately what's going to determine Tennessee's fate in the NCAA tournament. I don't know if it's going to come into play today or even tomorrow against Miami, but ultimately, if you want to know how far Tennessee's going to go, I'd keep an eye on Jordan Bone. I think that sophomore from Nashville is the key. He's a great player and he's a great young man, but Rick Barnes wants to see more consistency out of him. It really needs to start now. So that's going to do it for me for this pregame. I'll do another live blog, and I'll do another live stand-up later on today after the game, and you'll have an opportunity to see a lot of live video from SEC Country, both on our site and on Twitter at MikeGriffith32. So for the Tennessee fans, I hope you enjoy the basketball game today. For me, if you wonder what sports writers think, we root for ourselves, all right? And I like covering the NCAA basketball tournament. As long as Tennessee's in it, I'm going to be there. So that's what I'm all about. I'm rooting for Team Mike today, and I'm rooting for some more Marriott points and some more time on the road covering the NCAA basketball tournament. That's why we're sports writers, right? We like coming to these games. So y'all enjoy the game at home. I would recommend you listen to the Vol Network. I think Bert Bertelkamp and Bob Kessling do a great job. Their analysis and the things that they can pick up on as guys that have covered the team all year, a lot more detailed than what you're going to get from the national guys. So my recommendation is to try and listen to the Vol Network as you can while you watch the game. The game is on True TV, and it starts at 12:40 Eastern Time. And we'll check you out later. Have a good one.